In this video, I want to share with you some thoughts about strategic or big picture planning, thinking long term about some difficult topics that there may not be complete agreement among all the stakeholders regarding. However, a very important part of the overall business planning process. Planning involves many components, ranging all the way from thinking about day-to-day activities and tasks to what crop and livestock enterprises to focus on next year, to employment needs, etc. The list goes on and on, as discussed in the previous video. Another important aspect of planning is to think about the big picture issues regarding your business and things that will impact your business. We often refer to this big picture thinking as strategic planning. Any comprehensive business plan needs to include a strategic component early in the planning process. From the standpoint of the outline described in the earlier session, the strategic plan could be included in the executive summary, or in the business description, or perhaps even as a separate section early in the overall business plan itself. This session describes what strategic planning is all about and provides a few examples to assist in implementation. I've spent a lot of time examining and thinking about the way farmers and other family business managers, for that matter, go about the process of thinking about and planning for the future. Based on that reflection, my own thought process included, it appears that many small business owners are somewhat inclined to begin the thought process by thinking about the resources that they currently have to work with. Then they build on that by thinking about what they can do with those resources. Maybe the manager has learned somewhere that establishing objectives and goals is important, and it is, but the point is that the whole thought process begins based on the current resources that are available. That may even be more true in agriculture than other industries because of the strong emotional ties that we have to some of the resources. I have this land, for example. What can I do with it? I have my labor and my skill resource. What can I do with it? I have this equipment. What can I do with it? That, I think, is where a lot of small business managers begin the planning process. While it's always good to think about making the most of the resources we currently have, if this summarizes the entire long-term planning thought process, the business may very well be constraining itself right from the start in terms of what it can ultimately accomplish. I ask the question, is this how the most successful growing businesses engage in the strategic planning process? I would argue not. What if we start the process of thinking about the future based on a vision of what it is we would like to accomplish? Dream about what your business, your family, etc. would like to be doing in the distant future. Along with that, think about what core values are important to you in the meantime. That's more of a mission-oriented thought process. Then begin to establish some manageable steps to get there. Specific things that need to be done along the way. We're going to call those objectives and goals. Then get even more specific. What activities or enterprises do we need to be engaged in this year or this season that helps to accomplish our goals and objectives, which ultimately lead us in the direction of our long-term dream, our vision? Then we think about specifically how we implement those activities. For example, we first decide that we want to be a cow-calf producer. Then we decide on breed composition, calving season, specific production practices, etc. We'll call those tactics or specific tasks. See the thought process flow? From a planning perspective, we start with the big picture and move incrementally toward the day-to-day decisions. From an implementation standpoint, as we are doing daily tasks and making smaller decisions, we think about it in the opposite direction. Does this move us in the direction we need to go one level up? The ultimate goal is that everything we do is at least intended to move us closer to achieving the vision that we have in mind. The big point here is you will notice that the resource base is the final step in the planning process, not the beginning point. Resources can be changed, bought, sold, rented, hired, fired, knowledge can be learned, etc. Strategic thinkers are not tied to the current resource base. They will make adjustments to that in a heartbeat, even major adjustments if that's what's needed to move them toward their ultimate vision. Just some food for thought as we embark on this strategic planning session. Let's think about this thing called a vision statement for just a minute. What is that? What does one look like? A vision statement is a concise summary of what is important to the stakeholders in terms of where the business is headed. It's a dream, but it's a dream that reflects those things that are most important to the stakeholders of the business. We'll call those core values. Developing a consensus vision statement for a family business involving a lot of stakeholders is a very difficult but very rewarding exercise, largely because it forces some of that much needed communication amongst the stakeholder team that we talked about in the previous session. It can serve as an exercise to bring the team together around a common end point. One way to sum up what a vision statement is all about is that it is a summary of what the business would like to be. One final point about the vision statement: the end product itself may not be as important as the ongoing stakeholder discussions regarding what needs to be in that final product. Even if the vision statement is never truly finalized, the visioning process has tremendous value. Many do not make a distinction between a vision statement and a mission statement, and in many cases the two concepts end up being combined into a joint final product and called one or the other. Technically, mission is more specific, less future-oriented, more concerned with what we're all about today. A good summary would be to say that the mission is more about who we are. Again, don't get too hung up on the technical definition or on what the final product or products are ultimately called. The important thing is to have ongoing stakeholder discussions about these issues so that it becomes ingrained in the ongoing planning process. In short, the vision is a collection of thoughts regarding what the business would like to be at some point in the future, while the mission is a collection of thoughts regarding what is really important to the business stakeholders today, whether articulated in two separate statements or combined into a joint summary that includes elements of both and could be called either. What is most important is that the stakeholders have jointly pondered both of these aspects of vision and mission. Notice in this example the broad and future-oriented focus of these thoughts that have been assembled into an example vision statement. Here's what we will be doing out in the future. Here's what we would like to be known for. Here are some core values or some must-haves, some things that we are just absolutely not willing to give up. Compare that to the more specific contemporary thoughts that summarize some core values as articulated in this example of a mission statement. Here is what we're all about now. Here is what we're recognized for. Here are some values, some specific targets associated with our business venture. See the difference between vision and mission. Goal setting is a little more tangible concept for most of us to grasp compared to visioning, perhaps because we've all done some of it. Goal setting is a process of documenting some manageable steps that need to be taken to move our business in the direction of our ultimate vision. I like to break the goal setting concept up into two distinct categories: long-term goals, I will call those objectives, others use slightly different terminology, and the second category will be short-term goals. I will simply refer to those as goals. Written or documented objectives and goals work, meaning they increase our chance of success. Reasons why they work, meaning they increase our chance of success, might include such things as they provide information for the stakeholder team. They focus our attention and our action efforts. They mobilize energy and efforts. They increase our persistence toward accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. They encourage the development of good work habits, and written goals and objectives provide measurable benchmarks from which to document our progress toward accomplishing what it is we have in mind to accomplish. As you think about writing objectives and goals, two acronyms might help to assure that the process is as productive as possible. Long-term objectives are often referred to with the acronym DRIVE. Accomplishing them will move our business toward the ultimate vision that we have established, so they're directional. It is possible to make this thing happen. They are reasonable. And we, as a business management team, are inspired and positively challenged by this objective. It's inspiring because we can see the business getting it done, and it will be a good thing when we do get it done. So we consider it to be visible. Finally, we have a general time frame in mind, usually a few years down the road, but we don't have a specific deadline established, so they are eventual. Short-term goals, on the other hand, are associated with the acronym SMART. They are very specific and have a measurement associated with them, so that at the end we will be able to tell if we accomplish them or not. We know that it is possible to make this thing happen, so they are attainable because others have done it, or based on some assurance otherwise assurance that it can be done. It will make our stakeholder team feel good or proud if we achieve this goal, so they are rewarding. Finally, one of the primary distinctions between long-term objectives, my terminology, and a short-term goal is the specific time frame associated with a short-term goal. There is a deadline, usually within a year, but that might not always be the case, associated with specific short-term goals. Here are a couple of example objectives and associated goals. First objective, increase gross income per acre. Associated goal, increase average wheat yield to 42 bushels per acre next year. Obviously, if historically we've been raising less than 42 bushels per acre, and we can accomplish that short-term goal of increasing yield to 42 bushels per acre next year, that will lead us toward accomplishing our long-term objective of increasing gross income. Second example, objective, reduce our workload. Associated goal, contract for custom alfalfa harvesting beginning this year. If we have previously been doing that work ourselves, and this year we have someone else do that work for us, that obviously helps us to achieve our long-term objective of reducing our workload. First, notice the differences described earlier. The objectives are more general. They do not have a number or a measurable observation associated with them, and they do not have a specific timeline included. However, it is implied that they will be accomplished sometime within the foreseeable future. The goals, on the other hand, are very specific and have a time associated with them, so that by the end of that time period, whatever it is, you will know whether or not the goal is accomplished. Second, if you noticed a moment ago, I said objectives and associated goals. That wording is very intentional to drive home the important point that short-term goals always need to be associated with a longer-term objective. By the same token, every long-term objective should have at least one, or often more, short-term goals attached to it. This assures that specific manageable steps will be taken within a specified time frame to meet the objective, which ultimately moves the organization toward attaining its vision. Remember the thought process flow. Several worksheets and additional information are available on the website associated with this project and in many other places to assist farm business stakeholder teams in the visioning and goal setting process. Another important component of strategic or big picture planning involves taking a hard look at our business from the standpoint of things that we can control internally, we'll call those internal factors, and things that the world is throwing at us that we may need to respond to but we cannot control, we will call those external factors. Internal factors include such things as those listed here, and you can probably think of others. what we know how to do, our educational attainment, how many hours we choose to work, our financial position. One can argue that some aspects of financial position are within our control, while other aspects may be beyond our control. Other things that we have some control over are how involved various family members are in the business. Your specific level of degree of control over that depends on where you're at on the organizational chart, right? Where you decide to operate. Yes, that is within our control. You can always pack up, sell out, and move. And as discussed earlier, your resources. Most things can be bought or sold if needed to adjust the business. Internal factors are categorized as either strengths or weaknesses, things we are good at and need to continue to capitalize on, or things that we are not so good at and need to either improve on or quit doing. External factors, or forces as they are often called, are things that may or will impact your business that you'll need to respond to, but you cannot directly control. What are the emerging consumer trends, and are they positive or negative for your business? What are the markets doing, and how long will they be doing whatever it is that they're doing, good or bad? Are weather issues like drought a persistent issue? Are there technology or other industry trends that you need to be aware of and be responding to? What about policy, zoning, or other legal issues that might impact your business? Tax law changes, interest rate policy, a local community passing a zoning restriction that may impact you, etc. External factors are categorized as either opportunities or threats, things that could potentially benefit our business, financially or otherwise, or things that could negatively impact our business, again, financially or otherwise. The first step in an internal/external factor evaluation is to simply list and brainstorm about the most important factors that do or could impact your business in either category. Broad stakeholder input is essential so that as many factors are at least considered for inclusion on the list as possible. Once the most significant business impacting factors are identified, there are systematic thought processes that can be called upon to help the stakeholder team develop strategies to deal with them. One such tool to summarize the information into manageable chunks and ultimately help develop strategies or management actions is often called a SWOT analysis. There are other names and variations of the same concept that some of you may be familiar with. The SWOT planning tool is often implemented as a matrix where internal factors that have been identified as important by the stakeholder team are listed as either strengths or weaknesses on one axis. Here in this example I have them listed across the top. And the external factors that have been identified as important by the stakeholder team are listed as either opportunities or threats on the other axes. Here I have them on the left vertical axes, for example. Strategies or management actions are then developed for the various intersections. A couple of examples will hopefully help to clarify. Assume for a moment that a particular farm is a relatively small scale, but historically very low cost per bushel or efficient wheat producer. They know this because they've compared their cost per bushel with averages over time using benchmark data sets such as the Kansas Farm Management Association data set. The fact that they have at least historically been a low-cost producer is considered an internal strength. They know how to produce wheat efficiently. However, they realize that in order to remain competitive, they need to replace some equipment that is aging and no longer up to date on technology. They realize that modern equipment is designed to cover a large number of acres, and it will be difficult to remain a low-cost producer if they cannot find a way to obtain machinery services that they need, perhaps planting no-till, for example, in a cost-effective manner. This technology fact is viewed as an external threat to this particular farm. Therefore, they need a strength/threat intersection strategy to address these factors. In this example, they can think about strategies such as expanding their acreage to the point that they can justify purchasing modern equipment, leasing or renting the equipment they need, or similarly, sharing the ownership of the equipment with others who are facing the same hurdle. Those of you viewing this segment will likely be able to think of numerous other strategies that could solve this problem. The point is to see how laying this issue out in a systematic thought process can help lead to solutions, or at least a list of strategies to consider. One more quick example: imagine a cow-calf producer that recognizes that they are currently a high cost per pound producer. Again, they know this because they have meticulously calculated their costs, compared those cost numbers to some benchmarks. This fact is obviously considered to be an internal weakness. At the same time, they're noticing that premiums can be obtained for certain characteristics or production practices that they may be in a good position to implement. That outside market factor could be considered an opportunity for this particular farming operation. So what they may be looking for are strategies or actions that fall in the intersection of internal weakness and external opportunity. Potential solutions might involve a combination of trying to manage costs while at the same time taking action that will provide some access to higher valued market opportunities, doing the things necessary to obtain OQBN premiums, for example. To summarize, strategic planning is all about big picture thinking, addressing issues that go well beyond the day-to-day management challenges of keeping the farm or business running. I would argue that the strategic planning process needs to begin with a dream regarding what the business should look like or accomplish in the long term, founded in a set of core values that reflect what the business stakeholders consider to be firmly held beliefs. Having an end in mind then forms the foundation for manageable steps, objectives, and goals that move the business forward. Simple tools like a SWOT analysis can help the stakeholder team to get a grasp on the internal factors that need to be managed to move the business forward, while at the same time getting a feel for the external forces that may need to be responded to. It's simply a tool to assist in organizing thoughts around the vast array of things that any business needs to consider. In the next video in this module or segment, you will be briefly introduced to an online business planning tool that's been popular among agricultural producers.